Carbohydrates, friend or foe? Are they good or bad? In this video, I'm going to be going over why whole food carbs support fat loss, hormones, and metabolism. It's a hot topic in the keto space, low carb space, and it has been for years on end. So the truth about carbs: do carbs make you fat? No. And excess calorie consumption will. So if we have increased energy intake, decreased energy output being exercise, then we gain weight or fat. Carbs are really important for workouts, brain function, and recovery. They're our primary and preferred fuel source for our brain and our body. So when we exercise, especially high intensity or lifting weights, we use glucose or glycogen, which is carbs that are stored in the muscles and liver. Whole food carbs are preferred. So, for example, sweet potatoes, fruit, rice, oats. Processed carbs, sugar, white bread, soda, not so much. And I'm going to go into this and give some examples shortly. So we're trying to get the foods with the most bang for our buck, which we'll go into. So carbs and hormones and metabolism. So low carbs. With the keto, low carb diets, what happens when we have low carb status in the body? We have depleted glycogen stores. It increases cortisol, the stress hormone. We need cortisol in small amounts, but when we have elevated stress hormone or cortisol, it puts us into a fight or flight mode. This puts us into a catabolic state, meaning that it's harder to retain and build muscle, and it's easier for our bodies to store fat. It puts us into that storage, fight or flight. We also feel more anxious, on edge, if our cortisol is higher. So having those carbohydrates will fuel our T3 and T4 thyroid hormones, which control our metabolism. So actually increasing carbohydrate intake or having a moderate amount in our diet can help maintain and sustain a good metabolism. It also supports testosterone and estrogen balance, especially for males. When cortisol is elevated in males, testosterone is decreased, which is not a good thing for our energy levels, muscle mass, bone mineral density, and fat loss. There's a hormone called leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is the fullness hormone, ghrelin is the hunger hormone. With carbohydrates, they release leptin, which makes us feel full, satiated. It's like, say, after a nice big pasta meal or carbohydrate-rich meal, you just feel satiated, you feel good, it releases the feel-good hormones and makes us feel full. Now, on the other side of that, ghrelin is the hunger hormone. It'll make us want food more. And say if we have a very low carb diet, we're going to feel more hungry throughout the day. Now, as I was saying, it all comes down to energy balance. So with this leptin, when we have elevated leptin, it makes us feel full and it prevents us from overeating. Say if we're constantly hungry, we're going to be peckish, we're going to be snacking and more likely to overeat, which means that if we have an increase in energy intake and our exercise stays the same, we're likely to gain weight. So that is something to keep in mind. What are the best carbs for fat loss and hormones? We want to go for the foods that have the most bang for our buck, the most micronutrients per gram of food. Our whole foods, sweet potatoes, fruit, rice, oats, quinoa, legumes, vegetables, starchy vegetables. We want to minimize processed carbs, white bread, added sugars, refined carbs, etc. Now, the best time to eat these carbohydrates is pre and post workout. As like I said before, when we work out, we use up those muscle glycogen stores. We use carbs as our fuel source, and also in the evening, a couple of hours before bed, as the carbohydrates can help us feel relaxed, sleepy, increase melatonin and serotonin, and put us to sleep, meaning that we get a better sleep. If we are completely depleted before bed, we're not going to sleep as well because, like I said, we have an increase in cortisol, which will not support our sleep and make it harder to get into the deeper phases of sleep. Now, I've got my fat loss plate model as an example. We want to try and pair carbohydrates with fiber, fat, and protein. That way, we don't get a huge spike in blood sugar. We get a stable release, which means that we have sustained energy. So while we're getting it from whole grains and whole carbohydrates, unprocessed carbs, that will help because it has fiber with it. It's low GI, meaning it's slowly released into the bloodstream. However, when we pair it with our fats and our protein and our vegetables, it's even slower and even better for us. It gives us a sustained output of energy. I've also attached this complex carbohydrates image with some great examples of complex carbs. Low GI, low glycemic index, give us a slow release. Now, how many carbohydrates do you need for active individuals that are hitting the gym between 2 to 5 times per week and getting these steps up throughout the week? We want to get at least 40 to 50% of our calories from carbohydrates. The less active individuals will get away with 30 to 40 because, like I said, the main fuel source is carbs. We won't be needing as much if we're not as active. So just prioritizing those whole foods that are fiber rich will help to avoid any blood sugar crashes. Now, on a final note, carbs do not make you fat. It's the overconsumption of calories that do. And I like to use the example of eating McDonald's. Can you lose fat while you eat McDonald's, which is really high in carbs and fat? Yes, you can. However, McDonald's has a lower micronutrient content per gram, so it's not as much nutrients in the food. But it just goes to show that it's not so much about what we eat, but more how much we eat. I'm going to be making a separate video on the macronutrient breakdown of the optimal amounts that we should have, how much protein and fat and carbs we should have in our diet. But for now, this is the key takeaway. Carbs do not make you fat, and in fact, they support metabolism, hunger hormones, and fat loss. So I hope that helps. See you in the next one.